Okie
Right.
dokie.
We are now officially live, and we have Vahakn. Is it Vahakn Matossian? Is that how you pronounce it?
You did it well. Perfect.
What origin is that?
It's Armenian. My mum's
Armenian.
Armenian. Yeah.
And you obviously you're living in the UK at the moment. Have you
Yeah.
lived there all your life?
Pretty much was born here in '83, and then I spent 3 years in Brighton at university. Sorry, 3 years out of London, and then I spent a year in Colorado, and then more or less have been here and traveling quite a lot. So
But now you obviously a musical person, and we're going to get to chat about the music stuff as well. But a little birdie on my shoulder tells me that you're quite arty as well.
yeah, well, I grew up studying sculpture, fine art, and really wanted to be a sculptor, and then just got totally enamored and just loved the design workshops and materials and found that really making and solving problems was what I like to do. So I really sort of settled into that.
That's cool. So. So there must have been a turning point. There must have been something that said to you, I mean, your art is a wonderful career opportunity, but there's something more to design and building and designing and creating things. What was that turning point for you?
I think I don't. It's really hard. It really wasn't a turning point. I don't think anything just switches for me. It's a slow migration. It's following the path of the river. It's like going around different stones, and it's also following invitations. Quite often, when someone invites you to do something and you consider it, actually that's sometimes what's needed as opposed to what you can dream up. Um, but really following in the path of my father and working with him
Hmm.
in music and in things a bit beyond music, or at least beyond our own music, um, and working with people that want to make music, but maybe yes.
Hmm.
But there was no major event that did a seismic shift that changed my mind. It was more just
Okay.
it feels like a logical progression to me.
But you see, now that's quite important because you see, a lot of people think that there's going to be a light bulb moment in their life that is going to reveal to them what it is they're going to choose in terms of destiny and where they're going to land up. But for you, you kind of just followed a natural path, and it led you to your passion.
Yeah, totally. I would say that.
Tell me a bit
I
more
would say
about
that.
your dad and the music, and what kind of music are you guys into? What sort of music is he doing?
He is a composer. He's been working in the realms of contemporary electronic music, contemporary classical music, since the late '60s. He was one of the first people to use computers to make music,
Hmm.
and one of the first people to use synthesizers. He was among the group of people in the world who began using radio test equipment to create electronic music and to, yeah, invent really ways of making music. Very exploratory, very experimental, very physical. A lot of things are modeled around physical or scientific theories and ways in which you might be able to explore them with music. Sometimes probabilities in
Hmm.
mathematics
Yeah.
and using them to model music. And then physical installations, big spaces with circles of speakers or sensors that would allow people to run around the room and have their movement create music. He invented a system called the sound space back in the early '70s with Philippe Prévost, and it was a room that was rigged with ultrasound sensors, and when you went inside it and ran around or danced, you would create music to which you were dancing.
Get out
And
of here.
yeah,
I mean, why do science centers not have these installations today?
great question. You'd have to ask them. They did. The Pompidou in Paris had a permanent installation there for some time,
Hmm.
and he had big concerts in different countries, um, and in many ways, it was before it's a little bit ahead of its time. He was doing sort of geolocation of bodies in space, which is now kind of all the rage with VR and
I'm
smart
loving this.
buildings, yeah, and smart buildings and that kind of stuff. But it was very well experienced in lots of different places in the UK. maybe just slightly more experimental than people were ready for. But
I mean,
it's through that.
just to interrupt you there for a second, I go back to that question I asked you. I mean, was there any turning point? You do realize that, yes, you were following a river, but it seems like your dad and the stuff that he was doing was the water flowing through that river and kind of pushing in the right direction.
Yeah, yeah. I think I'm the river, and he's like logs and big boulders and banks, and my mother too. I think they're each a bank in the river,
Uh-huh.
and um, they filled me with lots of opportunity to explore and to navigate my interests, and which a lot of them are their interests. My mother was very very keen on modern art and art in general,
Hmm.
and folk music of different countries, and my father was very keen on exploring music, and I was very keen on design and finding the right solution. Essentially, I sort of believe, I'm going to go off on one now, but I believe that all designers are not satisfied. They're not
Hmm.
satisfied with the surroundings, and that could be the quality of things that they have or the way in which objects solve problems. And it's through this dissatisfaction that you start dreaming of different solutions.
Wow.
Design is not styling. Design is not taking a thing and making it black and giving it curves or making it shiny or purple laces or, you know, design is a series of questions that you answer physically and you test.
Absolutely.
And sometimes those design questions are fashion related, but real design is about a problem that's not been solved properly yet. And
So maybe we need to get you out of Cape Town for the World Design Capital event that happens in September, where they have the most incredible people who come and talk about design. But as you said, it's not about shiny colors and stuff. They talk about designing curriculum. They talk about designing structures and philosophies and approaches. And there's mathematical design and artistic design. And it's just an incredible bringing together of so many amazing people. And it sounds definitely something up your alley. So I'm going to put you in touch with the person that organizes the event, because I think that you'd bring a lot of value to an event like that.
yeah, that
So,
sounds great.
and of course, we've got a couple of guests who've joined us as well. We've got people from Russia and from Hungary, and hopefully they'll get to ask some questions as well. So now you studied art, and then you start moving into the realm of combining your passion for making and your curiosity for making things, and you start moving into designing instruments with your dad. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So after design school and working for myself for a few years doing freelance furniture, lighting, installations, interactive artworks, and just exploring what I thought was worth doing. Um, he was a founding member of the British Para Orchestra and was working with a conductor called Charles Hazelwood. And the Para Orchestra is an orchestra of amazing professional musicians, all of whom are disabled in some way, either visually or they have a physical disability or an impairment. They're living with an impairment as well as being a phenomenal musician.
Mm-hmm.
And we found that people were very excited by the concerts that we put on or were part of. And people would approach us and say, "Oh, I'm in a wheelchair and I can't use my arms, but I really want to play. What can I play?" And we found out quite quickly that there were very few, basically no instruments existed that would allow someone with a severe impairment to play um, uh, expressively
Mm-hmm.
and with musical freedom and with precision. Um, and so we set about making a hands-free music controller, which was basically a mouthpiece. And as you moved, it would register your movement and your different things in your mouth, like bite pressure and tongue pressure and breath pressure. And we thought through all these variables, we could make something compelling to play. So we started doing it. It was very, very, very difficult, but we got a certain way. And I think I've actually got I'm currently repairing one right now. So
Okay,
this
so
is
it's
the,
a device that fits on your head, and
yeah,
then you put a
okay.
mouthpiece, like a straw or something, in your mouth.
Yeah, it goes on like that. And
Mm-hmm.
there's a mouthpiece, and it can be any color. This one happens to be clear. And
Uh-huh.
it goes in the mouth and it registers breath pressure. And then when you move your head, there's a pointer on screen, and we've got a special software which runs actually within Ableton Live, which is a music software, and it allows someone to move their head around, select notes, and play them on the screen with expression. So this screen, oh,
I think he's frozen for a second. Hopefully he'll come back. Oh, he's dropped out, but hopefully he'll join again. Thank you so much for joining, guys. So you're back again. I think we lost you there for a second. So you were talking about the headpiece and the straw. I think he's still got an issue there. Hopefully he'll rejoin and then we can continue. But from what I can gather, Vahakn is actually working with the para orchestra, which I'd like to find out more about. Let's see if Vahakn's back. He is back.
hi there.
Okay.
I've just changed devices.
Okay.
I decided to crash over and over.
So you were talking about this device that for the para orchestra, which I'm fascinated, obviously, to learn more about as well. But this particular device uses the breath and obviously the movement. Is it connected wirelessly or via USB to a computer?
Yeah, so it's got a wireless connection, and it uses a special chip which lives in here. It's called the Riot sensor, and you can see we've got it's quite a small amount of electronics. This is all a 3D printed headset, and the breath tube goes inside, and then over here is just the battery, which lives on the left ear. So it's it's not that much to it. So it connects wirelessly, and it's got a battery, so the player really only needs this. That's all they need, and they need the software, and it allows them to play any instrument they want on the computer. So the guy we worked with was called Clarence Adu, and he's a trumpeter, and he had a car crash, and it stopped him from being able to play trumpet. And he has a trumpet sound which he can now play. He can play synthesized sounds. It's quite nice because you can build chord structures and you can build arpeggio structures with it. It's not just like a single note sort of polyphonic instrument. You can play timpani and drums and all kinds of things with it. It's really down to the composer. And actually 3 years ago in Setúbal in Portugal, we had a festival, and someone wrote 6 movements of a big piece which was written for high note with an orchestra. So there's even music written specifically for this instrument now.
No.
Yeah, as you can find a piece called Salt by composer Sevan Horrocks-Hopayan, who's written for high note. It's for this instrument.
That is just insane. But now, obviously, to make an instrument like that, someone needs the technical know-how, and someone also needs to write the app to make that work. So how did were you involved in that part, or did you get other people? Did you outsource that to other people to actually develop for you?
Yeah, it's teamwork. Absolutely, it's teamwork. So for me, I'm the sort of physical. I do the physical device itself. How does it interface with the body? What does it need to have? You know, we ask the questions.
You do the design.
Yeah, we do the design, and we ask all the questions. I do the design. Of course, it's a collaborative process. I just don't decide what happens in the design. It's informed by many factors. But yeah, I work with a programmer, and that programmer was amazing, a co-developer really, and we had long conversations about how to do different things, lots of different tests, including the musician from the beginning and throughout the process is really important. You've got to keep checking. If they can be next to you the whole time, that's also really good. But at least keep checking back with them and finding out what it is that's working, not working, what is it that they need.
That is incredible. And the mechanics, I mean, to actually build it, and did you use an accelerometer, the thing they have inside a cell phone to measure the movement, or was it basically the movement relative to a beacon, so that if you move either side of the beacon, it registers that type of movement?
This one is with an accelerometer. It's with motion positioning. We originally started doing physical devices that measured with the space using these sort of arms that would, a small stick that would be in the mouth, and it would do it physically, which was great. And then we moved over to, this was really an experiment. It's a sort of a lavish experiment to see if this thing can hold up in a concert scenario, but you have to go through the whole process to find out. And we've had many different experiments, and that along the way, maybe, 10, 20 different prototypes, and that's part of the development.
So that feeling, that first thing that you actually built, and then you go and test it out for the first time, what was that feeling like when you knew that you were onto something special?
That feeling often comes from other people who are invested in the project, or people who are, they see what you've done and go, oh yeah, okay, that's great, we can do this with it. And when the feeling of when it comes out of your hands, that's the feeling. It's not, magical joy, or I can tell you about a different project recently, which I can tell you in detail, maybe you're going to come onto it. But the feeling when someone takes it out of your hands and you can sit for half an hour or 45 minutes and just watch it work, and no one's asking you questions and no one's asking you anything, and the thing is just working, that's the best feeling.
So when was it Clarence Abu? Is that his name?
I do.
When he was playing, I mean, if he plays a piece of music and you were not in the same room but you were listening to it, would you feel that this is someone who is an able-bodied person playing a trumpet without even knowing?
Well, he's famously said, "I'd rather play music than walk again." And
that is interesting.
So, it comes down to, again, I'm doing this to enable someone, or to empower, or to whatever the word is, to help someone reach the potential that they see in themselves, to allow them to make the music they want to make, to write the music they want to write, because the tools exist for me, so they should exist for them.
And you mentioned something about 3D printing. So obviously now, in the last 5 to 10 years, the possibilities become endless if you can start 3D printing things. And then you also mentioned things like virtual reality. Are you starting to now integrate more of these technologies into your vision of instruments of the future?
Well, we've used 3D printing for about 7 years. It's a great tool. I wouldn't say the possibilities are always endless, no matter what you've got. They're just sometimes slightly quicker, and with a 3D printer, repeatable, which is really great. There's definitely limitations. I'm not incorporating VR or AI or AR yet. So virtual reality, augmented reality, and artificial intelligence or machine learning. We're not quite there in terms of what we're doing, although I'm sure we could be using them. They're just tools. They're tools for a job.
So for the future.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. As soon as I find an AI programmer who thinks they can improve our solutions, although we are going to be potentially partnering with a couple of companies who do use it in their solutions for music tracking, potentially. So it really depends on what the questions are, how you answer it, and the resources available. We operate on a pretty small budget in terms of resources, and that's just down to finding the right partners.
And most of the time you're taking existing instruments or scenarios, and you are enhancing it so that someone who is not able to regularly use that instrument is now able to do so. You're not actually looking to invent new instruments per se.
No, we are inventing new instruments pretty much exclusively. This is not an adaptation of an instrument. This is a totally new instrument, as is this one. So this is touch chord, and touch chord was made for someone who maybe hasn't got as much upper body strength as your average person, or someone who would like to play a key instrument
but cannot reach out as far as a piano might be placed. So if they can't reach out to play a piano and it's not close enough to their body. So the idea with this one is that it's touch sensitive pads, and this is a 1-octave keyboard, and it's made in such a way that the hand can reach almost all of the keys. Even if you can't use all your fingers, you can only use one finger, or your hand comes in a different angle. No matter which part of the skin you press on the key, it works. And you can reach a whole octave with only a few inches of movement. You can reach the whole octave with one hand if you have a whole hand to use.
That
And
is
the idea
insane.
is the shape is made so that it can be mounted anywhere. It can match the body. So if your hand is quite close to your body, this cutout allows and this cutout was invented by one of the players. They really sort of made this work. It means you can reach a whole octave without moving too much. And this gets paired with another one, so they work together. And this one has got a different amount of keys. This one has got 6 keys, and these keys are chord shortcuts. So you can play major, minor, diminished, augmented, seventh, and then another kind of chord. So many different styles of chords. So when you combine them together, you combine the root note on one side with the chord on the other side, and then you can play a D sharp diminished minor without knowing what a D sharp diminished minor is.
That is incredible. I mean, I know that a lot of young kids, you know, we run workshops with kids to use a makey. Have you ever seen a makey before?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I mean, I can just imagine someone, you know, putting foil blocks down and then the wiring going straight into the makey, and they would be able to create a rather simplistic version of something like that.
Yeah, totally, absolutely. I mean, that's kind of almost how we started. We started using Touchboard by Conductive, who make they make the Conductive Ink, and they make
that's a new thing where you can now literally print this Conductive Ink.
Yeah, you can paint it or you can screen print it. You can make a screen print at home or at school, and you can screen print your own circuit board.
That is insane.
This is 3. We did 3 layers to make sure there was lots of paint down, and then the whole thing is varnished. So even though it's varnished 3 times, it also works through the varnish.
No. Yeah. That is incredible. So obviously from a robust point of view, it means that the object is going to last.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, this is 5 years old already. And so this connects to we mount it with a custom mount that we made. So there's on the back is a load of Velcro. It's super lightweight, and it mounts onto a custom mount, like so. And now it's mounted. And then this goes onto something we bought. This is a magic arm. Yeah, it allows you can position it in any direction. This mounts on like that, and we have 2 of them, and they mount on wherever they need to mount, table or wheelchair or stool or mic stand or keyboard stand. And then a breath tube, similarly to high note. So a tube just like this one connects into it, and it works via breath pressure. So then the player, if you play without breathing, you get nothing. But if you breathe really hard and press a note, you get a loud note. But if you press a note and then breathe gently, you get a soft rising note. So you can play lots of different sort of expressive styles. So it's like a kind of a keyboard mixed with an accordion with the chords, mixed with the breath control of, let's say, a flute or a clarinet. And then on the other side, we also have these stripes. And these stripes behave like strings.
Oh, no. It's brilliant.
So it's really a mishmash of all the different styles many different styles of instruments. And we made it accessible using just rerouting how the paint goes.
So do people put on performances with these instruments?
Well, we've had some performances, yes. We played at the Design Museum in London. And I'm just about to, we've had 2 orders for 2 more instruments from players who want to have them in their repertoire. So we're about to create a few more slightly different variations. So we're going to alter the design slightly and change the size of the pads, which is totally possible because it's just paint.
That is just mind-blowing. I mean, I wasn't aware of these instruments that you had created, but one thing that has gone viral is, of course, your relationship with a Korean virtuoso who wanted to take part in an orchestra, but obviously because being blind, it limits you in terms of what you can do, and you can't really see what the conductor's doing. So before we get onto that, and I know that your father is a conductor, is that correct?
No, he's not a conductor.
He's not a conductor, but he's worked with the orchestra, and very much you've worked in the music world. How effective is a conductor? And I'm not asking this to be facetious. I'm just saying, do you really need a person to stand there moving a stick, or is the orchestra able to play without that conductor?
I mean, the conductor's really there. The audience only sees the conductor in the performance. And what the conductor has done, preparing the musicians in rehearsal, is a great deal of work.
Ah, you see, now that's important. No one ever mentions that part.
No one ever mentions that part. Depending on the conductor. So I dare say there are some conductors that roll in on performance day and just start waving a stick. Who knows? But there's good and there's bad, I'm sure. But really the conductor's job is to take this score, this musical score, which if you were to play, at the time, it's the tempo it says, and with the expressions it says, I'm sure it would sound like music. But really, this person is there to bring that music into the room on that day, or maybe into this century. So musical tastes change over time, and conductors have tastes that also change over time. And it's their job, or it's their role, to bring that score that was written however long ago into today, into the ears of the people who are sitting in the room today.
So they interpret it, and then they share that vision with the musicians.
They can do, yeah, absolutely. And also the size of the hall. You might change how, you might change how quickly you talk depending on how much you think someone can understand you. And the same with music. If the hall is a big hall and it has certain acoustic properties, you might change the speed of the whole piece or certain parts of the piece depending on the acoustics of the room and how many people are going to be there, because of how time affects, how the physical nature of the space affects how the music is in the room. And these are all very small things, but they make a big, big difference. And it's the conductor's role to, they might, have a vision of how they thought the composer meant a section to be played, which might not be marked. And it's down to them to do that.
Okay, and then they come along and they guide the orchestra with the baton. But obviously, someone like the Korean musician, his name is
Kyung-ho.
Kyung-ho, he obviously is not able to see what the conductor is showing with the baton. And you guys developed the haptic baton. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure, it's here. So this is the haptic baton.
It's just a simple stick.
It's a simple stick. It's a simple stick with some tricks on the inside.
Ah, not so simple. And what are those tricks inside?
So the tricks inside are a set of motion sensing electronics, accelerometers, gyros, that kind of thing. And they communicate. This is then wired, and this communicates to a tiny little brain. And the little brain has got a program that converts the movement into a signal, which we then send out to any players who are visually impaired or for whatever reason want to feel what the conductor is doing. And they can't see what the conductor is doing. And then they wear 2 wristbands, which I've buried in this box, but they wear 2 wristbands, and these give vibrations to the player, left and right, and they're high definition. So it's not just like your phone ringing kind of vibration. It's got an expressive curve to it, so the conductor can conduct gently and softly, and you'll feel like a expressive kind of woo 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 vibration. But they can do quite quick movements, and then you'll feel much more stabbing, harder vibrations.
I see what you're saying. So it's not just a regular vibration. There's a lot more emotion to that vibration, if you want to call it that. And when I say emotion, I mean E and then dash motion, as in something more to it.
Yeah, it's full of expression. It's like, so the aim of this was to provide a transparent link from the conductor's hand to the player's skin. And the way in which we did that, it basically meant we didn't want to create a language so that if it went down, it made a certain kind of bars, and left was that, and right was that. We didn't decide this semantic language. We just worked in the way that if we could link positions and speed and gesture transparently to the vibration between the musician and the conductor, they would work out what the language was. Because you can definitely.
How involved was Kyung Hyo, like involved in the process of? I mean, so you're going to start off with a vision that you want to translate this to someone who is visually impaired, and you're going to put a left and a right. How much input did he have in the sense that he said, well, maybe we need something in between the left and the right, so we have something in the middle too. Maybe I should wear something on my forehead so it goes left, right, and include the forehead as well, so we have a better continuity in terms of the shape and the depth of the movements.
I mean, it's not so much like tell us what you want and we'll build it. It's more like we went further back. We said, okay, how do you learn music?
Mm-hmm.
What do you do? How do you learn music? And they use Braille scores and they use recordings. And how much time do you spend learning music? Okay, what does it feel like when you're in the concert hall? What do you rely on normally in a normal concert hall? So we go much further back. Mm-hmm. We go. I say, tell me your daily routine in the morning. How do you get to work? Where do you work? Who do you work with? How long does it take you to learn a piece? How many hours a day do you spend? How many months in the year would you have to spend to learn this concerto? Once you've learned it and you want to play it 2 years later, how long does it take you to relearn it? So we go really, really right back. But that for me, this is sort of the crux of design, is don't ask the obvious questions.
Yeah.
You have to go back into life, and you have to go back into the emotional, sustainable style of someone's life, or the needs they have in their life that surrounds what they do. And if you can match the thing that you're making to that story, you'll have a far better chance of making a successful outcome. So we asked him all those questions, and then really when it came down to the physical stuff, because we'd understood what he was like as a person, and not just him, we then worked with lots of other musicians. Mm-hmm. We did the same questions for them, musicians in England who are playing, and we asked them, what have they had previously? What are they used to? What do they need? And actually, it's then down to the designer to interpret those and come up with solutions. And the designer takes all this information and says, okay, here is a way to provide this information to the person. And then I believe, this is my process, you don't propose that to someone, you just make it and test it. Because quite often the imagining something isn't as good as trying it.
Absolutely.
People are quite conservative, and if you say, oh well, what if this idea about going here and having 100 people do a thing, or it's not, people are quite conservative, they might not be up for that kind of thing. But if you just present them with the idea, the excitement or the physical reality can lead to a different kind of outcome. And so we went ahead and took all the information we had and did what we thought was right, and then tested it. And then you can watch the reaction. You can see what they think. And you can see what's failing, and you can see what's working. And then you can get their reaction verbally, and you can have a nice interplay there. And sometimes what they say doesn't match what they do.
Interesting.
So it's a very in-depth process, and it's where you have to kind of work very intuitively sometimes. Intelligently, intuitively, and sometimes you have to go against what you think, or shelve your ideas and just do what someone else says for a minute, even just to find out if it's going to fly or die, if it's going to be a good suggestion or not.
Well, I mean, the video that was going viral around the internet, and that was the one that caught my attention, obviously showed that it was very successful. But did it show the first time Was that the actual first time that he had tested it, or had you been testing it before, and that was a little bit of, after a couple of adjustments?
I'll show you. The only thing he tried was this first version, which isn't that different.
Okay.
But it's quite different.
Oh no, I mean, for the conductor to hold, I mean, that's something he can certainly work around.
Let's put it up there so you can see.
And that doesn't affect his ability to conduct the orchestra in any way, because he just has to work around the movements.
Well, this version actually, you could only hold it in like that. You don't hold it rock solid, and you could move it like this. That's what you could do with it. And it would have a half-second delay, and it would send a tiny buzz to a little vibrator along a cable. And it was completely out of time because of the delays in the radio. Actually, to make it with no delay is very difficult, and we've done it. And in the video, Kyung-ho really does only try this version for the first time in that video, and then within 2 days he's playing in the concert. And I've witnessed it a few times where once everyone's wired up and the system is working correctly, they just start making music. Everyone just starts making music.
How many of those systems can you have running simultaneously?
Infinite number.
Is it working on Wi-Fi?
No, it's not working on Wi-Fi.
So do you have a situation where you have to make sure that there's no radio interference, or is it actually wired?
No, we're using radio, but we can just change. We've got an infinite number of channels we can use. So we can disseminate the signal to as many people as have wristbands. As many people that have the wristbands, they can have the signal, and we've got no issues with radio because we're using a robust system, and it works really well.
I wonder if I was a blind musician, there would be a way to transmit that over the internet and actually conduct an orchestra real time over the internet.
It's all about connection speed. So if we can find an internet provider that boasts 0 latency, then we can do it.
Or we could take into account the latency and then make adjustments in the software.
Yeah. Totally possible. Yeah.
That would be fascinating, because I've seen people try to do an internet choir where they get a whole bunch of musicians all logged onto one Google Hangout, and they're all singing, and sometimes there's a slight delay to some of them, and the timing is just not right. But I mean, this is something that you could control.
What's really interesting we found out from our technology that we've made is that we developed a way of recording the conductor's performance with 5 sort of degrees of movement. Mm-hmm. So what we can do is we can record a conductor conducting, we can record the audio, we can record the movement, and then we can play back that movement through our system to someone who's visually impaired. So really, for the first time ever, a visually impaired person or anyone could take the data home with them, play it in sync with the music recorded from that day, and play back at home their version of their experience of the concert, so that they can then, if they wanted to, you could do this in rehearsal. You could record a rehearsal, you could record the movement of the conductor, and then a player could then go home and practice with a conductor, which sighted people can't do.
That is just insane.
Yeah.
So you're giving an advantage to disabled people that able-bodied people don't have.
If they want it, they can have it.
I like that. Now, we had a question from Russia, and I think we should give you a chance to ask the question yourself. So if you want to unmute yourself, you can ask the question. Let's see if she, there we go. You must just unmute yourself.
Oh yeah, we can't hear you. You have to unmute.
Yeah, you need to click on the microphone. There we go.
Can you hear us?
We can.
Hello, nice to meet you. We would like to know, I'm here with my student, and we would like to know, are there many disabled people who use your inventions?
Good question. Are there many people disabled who use your inventions?
So far, we've worked with a handful of musicians, so 4 or 5 musicians who use them in professional life. So there's 4 or 5 musicians who use the instruments we make. Most recently, our test with the Para Orchestra, we had 7 players, 7 visually impaired players using the baton. And we've got a few places around the world who are interested in buying the system or renting or having a system. So a choir in Texas and a blind school in Florida, and there's somewhere else, but I can't remember off the top of my head. So it's growing.
So do you go out and actively market to you know, you look for every country's got their own, you know, disability society, and they liaise with all the schools and I don't even know if there are orchestras in various countries, but even regular orchestras that would love to include people with disabilities. I mean, do you approach these people, or do you wait for them to approach you?
At the moment, time permits us to wait for them to approach us. But we're going to do some outreach this year, and we're going to do some fundraising in order to have someone on the team who can be actively doing that.
Well, I mean, look, all you need to do is just do a worldwide tour of 5 or 6 musicians and showcase what your technology does, and it's a no-brainer. Once you start doing that, I mean, people are going to be contacting you left, right, and center, because, you know, then they actually see this in look, just one video caught my attention. But if I knew that you were putting on a show, that would really, really impress me to actually go see it live and then have you stop and explain what it is that you've got there. That to me would be absolutely awesome.
We'll take it on. We've got a show in Korea coming in November.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, is it the kind of thing where you sit behind the scenes and they just mention, oh, by the way, we have so-and-so performing and they are blind and they're making use of technology? Or do they actually stop and maybe play a short little video clip or get you to talk a little bit about the actual technology?
I think it's going to be explained probably more in the program than the show itself, but it really depends on how they're going to run the show. I make the tools, and the people who want to showcase it can do it the way they want to do it.
Have you ever had any requests for an instrument that you've said, listen, in theory, I would love to assist you, but that's beyond what I can do?
No.
You're the kind of guy that if someone did ask you that, it would get you excited, because you'd be like, this is something that's never been done before, and I want to be the first.
You know, if there's a budget to get the right people to solve the problem, I'm in. And if there isn't, then we'll try and find it. I like a challenge, and, you know, any question about how to do something, it's just a matter of resources.
And is it expensive to develop new instruments?
It's expensive to pay experts to do their thing. I mean, define expensive. I don't know. No, it's not. Yes, it is. It depends.
So if it's something that you value greatly, you don't see the monetary value in it as expensive. You see it as, you've just given me an opportunity to live through my music, which is what I prefer to do that than walking. So obviously there, money isn't an issue.
Some people will spend £1,000 on a handbag, and some people will spend, you know, a couple of pounds or dollars or whatever on a meal, and some people will spend thousands of pounds on, you know, it just depends on your value system. And for me, I think this is incredibly valuable.
I think it goes without saying. But now, are you only fixated on musical instruments, or do you dream up a whole bunch of other things too?
Yeah, I often ask myself this question. So if I weren't in this, I think I'd probably be in prosthetics, in maybe normal prosthetics. I'm completely obsessed with the robot world and what's happening in robot landscape. And then occasionally I wonder why I'm not sort of a ecological activist and designing scientific solutions for, you know, the climate emergency that's currently upon us. So it's something I feel very passionately about, and I think everyone absolutely should be immediately right now doing everything they can to stop this planet from burning, which is currently what's happening.
So does your design mind start developing ideas on what we could do to resolve these sorts of issues?
It doesn't develop ideas. It starts asking questions. It works out who to go to. So if I were to do that, I would immediately just start a research. You know, designers, real designers, and this is going to sound a bit prophetic, but real designers, they don't just come up with ideas. It really comes down to the questions. And quite often, those questions disappear because they get asked and answered so quickly in their head. And it happens all the time. I'm constantly asking questions and answering them by experiencing the world, let's say. And then solutions come up, not because you're creative and a designer, but because the questions have been asked and answered. And so, and it really, I really can't stress that enough to anyone that's interested in being a creative designer or solving problems or making anything of any kind, is where is it going to be? Who's going to make it? Who's it for? Who's going to buy it? Why are they going to buy it? How's it going to die? How's it going to not impact the planet in a negative way? And is it useful for people or animals or the greater good? These are the main questions. And sometimes the question is, you know, is it red? Because I really like red. And maybe that thing is then for you. Or maybe you know that people are going to share the love of red with you. And they're automatically, some people are going to automatically get the thing because it's red. And that's valid also. But just ask the questions and you'll get an interesting outcome if you just keep going back and going back and going back and going back. And then pick your path through those questions, and it'll be a good one.
I get a sense that we have something in common. You don't sleep much at night.
I sleep really well, actually.
Oh, do you? Because I'm thinking that your brain is just, you know, there's a hamster wheel turning frequently, asking questions, and your curiosity is stoked regularly.
Yeah, it is. But I have a pretty healthy output for all this, so it's not like pent up going nowhere. And I love sleeping. So
so you've got a secret. The secret is to channel that curiosity into actually physically making things, and that will obviously keep you asleep at night, which is quite important. What is the future for? I mean, do you own a company? How does it work? Are you just doing design? I mean, do you have a company just for the instruments that you're making? What is the structure that you operate with?
It's really being rewritten with every project we do. What we do slightly morphs every time we do a new project. We're very morphable. It was a company at one point, and then we stopped being a company. Now we're an organization. It didn't make sense for us to be a company because we didn't really have customers. So we had projects we were running. The future with the baton is really going forward with all of the partners that were involved so far, which is the Para Orchestra and with the orchestras in Korea, with Dominant Agency, with our sponsor Shure, who give us the radio stuff, and with ACCAC Global, who are an organization who work in kind of this area of empowering musicians in different countries. And so the baton itself is sort of an organism which will continue, and we're just going to keep inviting orchestras to bring it into their, you know, technical repertoire to allow players to come in. We're going to start running some workshops and some making. We're in partnership with a charity called Drake Music in England, who do great work, and we're going to partner with them a bit more closely this year. And we're going to partner with some sponsors and some supporters who are going to help us sort of really bring the Human Instruments vision, which is to progress music culture. The aim of the game is to have musicians on stage, and you know, the audience don't even notice the difference between the people without impairment and the people with impairments.
That is incredible. I mean,
change music culture.
I do think that what could be done, because obviously I'm a big fan of education, and I like to promote STEM within the schools. I would love to see music teachers running workshops with Makey Makeys, where students are developing instruments you making use of the makey-makeys to develop instruments so they can get a taste of what it is that you're developing, and then also, invite students of all levels of ability to take part in their orchestras, and not allow them to, the school could sponsor an instrument if there was a student who showed promise and was interested in it, but not all schools know about the instruments that you guys develop. So at some point, obviously, you would have to showcase all of that. And how has business been impacted that you've gone viral? I mean, did you expect that video to go across the world so quickly?
I hoped it would. I mean, for me, the story is compelling, and one of the reasons is because I don't know anyone else doing anything like this.
Mm-hmm.
Not on this level of trying to reach the world stage. And I'm really not happy that there's no one else doing it. It's not good. It's bad that no one else is doing it.
Yeah.
If I'm the only one doing what I'm doing, it's just a bit lonely, but also there's not much competition, and it means that people who really need this stuff aren't getting it. And I don't really want to be the world leader in this field. And I'm not saying that I am, but it's
Mm-hmm.
looking that way in the person that's making the most noise, at least.
Yeah.
And when I find the other people that are doing this kind of thing, and when I do find them, there's a guy called Matan B, who runs an organization called Discotech, and he's doing some really great stuff. And when we met some years ago at a conference, it was like, oh my God, you're doing this too. This is amazing. You're doing professional stuff for people with disability. Oh my God, wow. There's two of us in the world now, Okay, there's more. I'm being dramatic, but really that's how it feels. And so we're really interested in approaching schools, universities, and helping them to run courses, or approaching organizations and getting them to think in the way we're trying to think, to make these really, nicely designed, well thought through devices to allow people to progress music culture, because that's really what it's about. It's progressing music culture to the point where, everyone, all the musicians that you know and love, they're from everywhere. They're all from everywhere with different experiences in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And people with impairment shouldn't be excluded from reaching the world stage.
Absolutely. I mean, we've done quite a few interesting interviews. We've done an interview with my friend Nikki, who has no arms, and she drives around Cape Town, and she's a clinical psychologist, and she travels the world as a speaker. We interviewed Derek Paravicini. I don't know if you know Derek Paravicini. He's in the UK.
Is he a singer?
No, he's a blind pianist, but he's autistic. He's a savant. And you can throw anything at him, and not only can he play it, but you can say to him, I want you to change the style to Elvis. And he doesn't even skip a heartbeat. He changes from whatever style he was playing into Elvis straight away. And his brain can interpret it so quickly, which is quite a phenomenal thing to see.
Wow.
And I mean, but he plays on the piano, and it's not like he also plays in a jazz band.
Mm.
So what I find interesting is that he's probably leading them, or maybe they're leading him, or they improvise together. But it's not like an orchestra. An orchestra, there's a timing issue that is required. So I'm just curious to know how many people would have never considered an orchestra because they are able to play on their own. But now with this new technology, you might say, there's actually a spot for me.
Yeah, I mean, I've witnessed that some musicians in orchestras, they want to get better and better and better to maybe become the soloist or the virtuoso. They want to get to a point where they can be the lead. So, some players do that. And a lot of visually impaired players who are destined to be virtuoso because they can't follow, they really want to get almost demoted into the part of being a cog in the orchestra, so they can have the experience of playing with people. And so there's this sort of like opposite path, not for everyone, it's very, it's person specific, but there are these opposite paths where people will join the orchestras and kind of want to get better and become a lead violinist maybe, or a virtuoso. And then for the visually impaired person, they want to, become part of the mesh, at least some of them. And and it's a beautiful thing. And it's quite funny watching the the rehearsal with the visually impaired players, because the conductor would ask a question, and almost all the visually impaired players will want to lead. They'll say, "Oh yeah, this comes here," and they explain as the leader. So you've got like 7 leaders sitting there
That is incredible.
Who are really feisty for this experience, when the other musicians sit there kind of waiting to be led. And it's an interesting dynamic. And they also speak with their instrument, because they can't talk about parts of the score as readily as the visually impaired. They won't say on page 4 there's a thing that goes blah 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 blah. You know, they'll say at this point blah 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 blah. Then it does it blah blah blah, and they'll talk through their instrument.
That is very interesting.
So there's a subtle difference, yeah.
But a lot of people, obviously, they've learned to play an instrument, and then you've modified or you've created something that they can then use. But what about people who want to start out, that have never played a violin before, and they happen to be blind, and they would like to learn? Or could a deaf person learn to play the violin? Have you developed anything for deaf people?
We haven't specifically worked for people that have hearing impairment yet. We haven't started there with any project. It's never come our way. But,
because that would be quite interesting. I mean, can you imagine you would need a visual cue, and they could actually see the picture moving up and down. They could kind of get a sense of what the sound is doing when they play a certain note, and maybe there is a vibration aspect to it as well, so that they could actually feel the beats, so they know when to join in. It would be fascinating to see a range of disabilities taking part in an orchestra.
Yeah, well, that's really what the para orchestra is about bringing in people from with all different kinds of impairments. And you know, many people have approached us saying this baton is really good for hearing impaired people, and this is why. And so with a few alterations, we might be able to make it useful for them if they're needed. Quite often we've found that if you design something really well for one group, if you just actually design it really well for a certain group or a certain set of questions, because it performs well in a certain area, it's almost automatically performs well in a different area. It's just how it works. If you do something, if you only answer the design questions and do it really well and focus on specific performance of the object, you will find spin-off. There'll be a spin-off where it works really well somewhere else. It's like in a TV show. You invent, 6 characters. Suddenly the second character becomes a bit more interesting, and they have a spin-off show. It's because it was a really well thought out character that can hold their own. And it's the same thing with objects. Is if you just really think through the character of the device or of the thing, like you can use a spanner as a hammer if you try hard enough.
Okay, so we've got time for 2 more questions, and I know that we've got a lot of people who are watching the live stream at the moment, and also quite a few schools. It's a little bit early in the US, but they're going to be watching the video a little bit later on this morning. What I wanted to know is, what is your plan for the next 3-4 years? I mean, have you been thinking that far ahead, or you're just kind of going with the flow with the river?
The river's flowing, absolutely. The plan is to focus with the baton to get, all the world's orchestras to get the baton on their shelf, so that they have the opportunity to invite visually impaired musicians. The other plan is to partner with educational organizations and to help inform them and maybe run some modules and some courses to run some parts of their design education. And then to get the players that we're working with on stage in various places playing their instruments, and to partner with, maybe find a tech company who appreciates what we're doing and wants to push in a new direction. So it's kind of threefold. We like to work in education. It's really important, really, really important to work in education. And then to perfect things we've done already, and then to find partners for new things, because what's possible is always changing. So,
well, that just means exciting times ahead. And the last question is, there are going to be a lot of young people who are trying to work out what should I be doing? Should I go and study at university? Should I go into design? Should I go into some of the STEM fields? If people wanted to pursue the path that you followed, what advice would you give them?
Depending on their age and what they're up to, I would get some experience. If you can get some experience with a design company of some kind, a short internship. The ethics of internships are being discussed quite a lot at the moment, but I really enjoyed mine. Don't do it for too long, and make yourself indispensable so they hire you. Is one way. If you're in school still and you're really interested, look around in the world at what you don't think is going so well. Really look for those things in the world that you think can be changed, can be fixed. I would really encourage people to look into the ecology and climate crisis we're in now. I think actually that's really important. I think helping disabled people and saving animals and attacking the climate crisis are the three main things. And if I'm going to go off really far, is education for women across the world. If there's a way that we can help allow an education for all women across the world, women and girls, I think that's going to have a massive effect on whether we survive as a species or not. Because there's lots of places in the world where that just isn't an option. I'm talking in broad, sweeping brushstrokes right now. So if
I saw your baton; it was moving all over the place, but I got the music.
I hope I'm not offending anyone with
not at all. No. I mean, look, we are hopefully going to be doing an interview with Greta Thunberg at some point.
Amazing. Yeah, great.
And possibly even Malala at some point as well. So those points that you raise are critical. That there are not enough equal opportunities for young women in many countries around the world. And I mean, it should be a no-brainer. But from an ecology point of view and from the environmental point of view, I do believe that companies should be using the design process to take steps to change or to modify their conduct so that we can actually make a more positive impact on the world.
I totally agree. Yeah, we've got the technology now. We have it.
We've had it for a while. We just need to change attitudes. I think attitudes, a lot of people are saying, so what if I don't get a straw? I mean, they'll give me a little plastic, a cardboard straw, and I'm doing my bit for humanity. But the fact is, you're still getting a plastic cup that the cardboard straw is going into, and that defeats the purpose. So the companies really need to modify their approach and not think that just by putting a cardboard straw, you fix the whole ocean plastic problem.
Yeah, I mean, there's a seismic approach that should start in education, and it needs to happen across all ages right now. The education needs to happen across all ages. Young people, middle-aged people, older people, all have to go back and re-educate themselves over what's okay and what's not okay. And there's different things that are okay in different places. In terms of people who are wanting to follow design path, if anyone wants to talk to me about specifics, because I think it's difficult, because depending on where you are in your path, you might be following different things. But if anyone is interested in this world of designing instruments for disabled people or accessible tech of any kind, accessibility is it's of all the things I've worked in, it's one of the most interesting fields. It's so interesting. It is so exciting, and you just don't get such difficult design questions. And I think really, accessibility, space travel, and design for the ecological crisis we're in now, they're like the juiciest of all design questions. They're so juicy. There's so many things you can't do. The things you can do are really specific, and it's. And when I say things you can't do, I mean restrictions on the design process, on materials, how they're going to behave, how close they're going to be to the body, what shape they have, all the things that make a design thing juicy. And also now you have this wonderful choice between what materials you use. Are you going to use the easy material that pollutes, or are you going to go a bit deeper and look for the sustainable material that does not?
Yeah.
Are you going to make something that's going to provide work opportunity to someone in a different country where there's not so much work? Because we have this global situation where we can, I can specify a part of a product in Africa or India or Jamaica or down the road. That's my choice. I can choose where it comes from.
Correct.
And what does that mean? What are the ramifications of that? Does that mean that they deal with the plastic, chemical pollutants in their rivers over there, or does it mean that I look for a recycled bottle filament for my 3D printer over here? And is that even good enough? I would argue that it's not good enough. It's like a band-aid, a temporary patch on something that's already bleeding. Maybe there's a different.
We've just learned now that in Australia, obviously from a recycling point of view, many of the figures they have been quoting are not even accurate. They've just been throwing stuff into landfills anyway, and they haven't been recycling as diligently as they've been marketing. But I suppose, at the moment, we're living in a world where money makes the world go round, and people step into power not because it's the right thing to do, but it's because they can make money out of it, or it's going to give them even more power. And I think that at some point we need to have a little bit of a shift in momentum and perhaps attitudes. And we're going to vote for Vahakn as president. I don't know which country, certainly not the UK, because maybe Theresa May needs a bit of a replacement. And I'm sure you can wax lyrical on that too. But I mean, just from a standpoint, in terms of the world, there's a lot going wrong with it, but a lot of it is fixable. And I think that, having inspirational people like you out there, it certainly does help students start to develop ideas that maybe, as young as I am, I can still make a difference. And I can also invent things. These are things that have been invented the last 2 or 3 years, and I have that ability to do that as well. I want to make a difference as well. And I think that the advice that you've given is spot on. So I would like to say thank you so much for making time to spread your message of positivity, and in terms of the design process, I think that's so critical. I will get my design people to chat to you, because I think it would be great to have you in Cape Town at the Design Festival. It is an incredible mix of the most phenomenal people from around the world who come and take part in this event. And I think it would be great to have you in Cape Town, showcasing your incredible inventions and getting to meet you in person as well.
Thank you so much.
All right.
It's been
Thank
great
you.
talking to you, and good luck to everyone with their projects and what they're up to. And if you aren't sure what you're doing, pick a friend, ask them, and do it now.
Awesome. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop